You've tuned into the Bellingham Podcast for the week of November 1st, 2020. This is episode 170.
Getting there.
From the more somber side of the city by the Salish Sea, and I like alliterations, I'm AJ Barce.
And straight out of 98226, looking over a beautiful, we'll tell you later. I'm Chris Powell. On this episode, we are going to talk about how everything has its place. We have a way to be able to compartmentalize your work life, your personal life, and getting things set up get on the good foot, as James Brown once said. Won't you join us, dear listener? This is a Bellingham podcast.
Well, trick-or-treat season is done, but I still feel a little bit of a Halloween vibe. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thank you. As one of the fun things about this show, in which we don't have advertising, and that we control the content, we control where we record from.
Do not adjust your dial. We control the horizontal and the vertical.
That's right, and the diagonal and the multidimensional. AJ, where the heck are we right now?
We are in one of Bellingham's finest cemeteries.
That's right, on the corner of U Street and Woburn. We're looking over the cemetery and a whole lot of our Bellingham pioneers and a lot of families that, oh, by the way, if you happen to be driving around town and you happen to see some roads, there's a darn good shot that the family, one of the pioneer families, may be having a road named for them. We're not going to name any names.
Yeah.
But as we're recording, this is November 1st. In some interpretations, this would be All Saints Day. Mm-hmm. And so I just had a random thing. How about we record? We wanted a quiet place because introvert Chris doesn't like to be around people. Extrovert AJ
still doesn't like to be around people,
but also Mr. Get Out, Captain Get Out. Let's get
Yes.
outside while it's still a little chilly in the air, but otherwise beautiful. We're watching the leaves as part of our in-studio audience around here. But I want to make mention where we are at here. We are sitting on a bench which was dedicated in loving memory of Joshua Paul Cutler. And Joshua was born June 3rd, 1978, and passed away March 19th, 2013. If my math is working for me, Mr. Joshua was about 35 years old. And the family, beloved son, grandson, brother, father, friend, Josh's daily gift to us all: remember to love yourself. 2 words have yet to be spoken, and on this podcast, I think that was a great way to be able to put things into perspective. And so we are sitting on Josh's bench.
Yep,
as
and
we're
we
recording.
Didn't know Josh. Literally, this was a random idea from the both of us, and it was kind of fitting. This was where we found it, and anyway.
But as we are looking over a beautiful cemetery and a beautiful, just accessible via vehicles and foot traffic and things, I thought this would be a great way to be able to have another episode here in town, doing what we do in a beautiful area. AJ, let us do a little bit of housekeeping.
Yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. So after 170 episodes, by the time that you, dear listener, listen to this, 198 files have been uploaded to the feed. We are actually getting close to our not 200th episode, because we qualify an episode differently, but we are hitting a cap of our hosting service. So Chris and I have started processing our older moniker, the BPM moniker,
Bellingham Podcast Media Tech. Oh my goodness, those were the days.
Which for our OG listeners, you'll remember those are the first 47 episodes that we recorded. Because Chris and I are geeks, we are going to be putting it into the Creative Commons and putting it into internetarchive.org. I've already started the process, and as we continue with the show under now Bellingham Podcast, there will be another repository created on the Internet Archive for both BPM Tech and Bellingham Podcast, and all of our historic shows will be up there. So if you notice that the feed starts getting cold, that's intentional, but all of the episodes will still be online. You can still hear the sweet, dulcet baritone sounds of my partner in crime, Chris Powell, on the internet, archive.org.
This public service announcement was brought to you by AJ Barce, Geek at Large. And oh, by the way, there's a little bit more housekeeping we got to do.
Yeah, I've got a shout out. So late yesterday, I got a special delivery from the UK, and I got to give a shout out to UK Dan. He goes by at timely_moments on Instagram, and he is the co-host of the Zulu Time podcast. And I got a special delivery. They've got they did a special batch of their logo as a morale patch.
Oh boy!
Yeah. So I've got it on my on my normal photography bag, but it's my everything bag. So anyway, it's replaced the right now. It's replaced the TGN spot because I have the Greg Ganado podcast patch. We should look at getting a patch for us. We should talk off the mic about doing that.
We'll talk about that. We'll see what goes on for 2021. But
he's inspired me. Yes,
so anyway. But Zulu time. Dan
Zulu
from
time.
the UK.
Really good.
Color me covetous of the morale patch when there are some available, because I'm all about dedicating money to crafts and goods and such. I'll be one of your first 3 customers. Please believe that. But anyway, I think that's a wonderful way to get a little bit of advertising out there.
Yeah. So
and you'll have 2 blokes from the stateside that'll be putting that on their EDC bags. That's for sure.
Cheers, mate.
Yes,
so anyway, on that same note, I did want to give a Watch Fam shout out because yesterday we found out that Sir Sean Connery had passed on, and the original James Bond. So on my wrist today is not a Zulu Alpha strap, but I actually have the original Bond NATO on my Baltic. So I wanted to give a shout out to my Watch Fam peeps since we're in that vein with Zulu time.
Yes, I did. I wasn't aware that you were going to do that. You back in the day when I originally got the SKX 007. Thank you very much. You got me the Spectre band, and that is still in my one of 3 heavily used straps, and I just didn't put it on because Sir Sean was a fine actor. Thoroughly enjoyed the roles that he played. Finding Forrester.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's not he's not just a swashbuckling, womanizing, horribly un-PC Bond in the 60s and early 70s. He also had some great performances as well.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so yes, I still have the Spectre band as well. A couple episodes back, you were taking part in a virtual art show.
Yeah. So and then we had our double episode, and then we forgot to revisit back.
Life occurs.
Well, life occurs. So anyway, I was one of the featured artists for Bellingham's Art Walk, sponsored by the Western Washington University Alumni, and because of the Rona, got put online. So anyway, if anybody wanted to watch my interviews and stuff of that art show, it is available online. A link is in the show notes.
And for the love of Q, M, and Moneypenny, drink!
Shaken, not stirred.
That's right.
Anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to City of Bellingham and Western Washington University Alumni for hosting me on that studio tour. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
A little bit of a primer teaser, which will lead into, it'll make a lot more sense because this episode kind of is going to kick off once this project of mine kind of wraps. The unofficial motto of the show is "We'll go first."
Yep.
So I had my first hard drive failure in probably a decade and a half, if not 2 decades.
Welcome to the club.
It was a brand new drive, Chris.
Yep.
And as many people know, Chris and I both do kind of a spin-off of the 3-2-1 backup method of all of our stuff.
3 backups of your media, 2 different types of media, whether it's cloud, external drive, or on your desktop computer. One of them is off-site.
That's it.
Yes.
So most of mine are always off-site. but anyway, I decided to bring everything in-house, looking at doing a network-attached storage solution. And out of it, I've gotten some insights that I think listeners of the show will appreciate because, oh my gosh, if you've been taking photos personally, non-pro photog stuff here, you will be shocked how much data you've got up in the cloud stored in Google or Amazon or whatever. And there are mechanisms to get it out. Google Takeout. No, that is not a way to get food delivered to your location. But I was shocked, Chris, at how much personal photos data is up there, and then how many duplicates, triplicates, quadruplicates, octuplicates, if that's even a thing, of the same photo that I hadn't looked at in 2 decades was up there that I don't care about. That's a primer, which gets us into getting stuff in place.
But stay tuned for a future episode of Lord of the Data, the Fellowship of the Naz.
Oh, that's a good one.
I just off the top of my head had to spurt it out. Now let's talk about getting things in place. So this idea initially came from another podcast that we are fans of, the Art of Manliness podcast, and you brought this one to me offline.
Yeah. So previously on the Bellingham podcast, we'd mentioned mise en place, which is French for things in place, putting things in place. I had just listened to this episode where they had the author of like Chef's Secrets of Organizing Your Life. The book was called Everything in Place, The Power of Mise en Place in Organizing Your Life, Work, and Mind. And it was by Dan Charmas. Sorry, Dan, if I'm messing up your last name.
Please let us know if we messed up your name, and we'd love to have you on the show.
But anyway, on AOM, he gave a great interview, and this dovetailed perfectly because I had just said on our show, I hate checkoff lists, and then I listened to that episode, and I realized why all these years I've hated checkoff lists. So we're going to dive into mise en place Bellingham style.
Sure.
But before we do that, we should probably say that you might be listening to us on KMRE 102.3 FM.
They have everything in place online on the internets at kmre.org, y'all.
Y'all?
The y'all is one of those extra features for encryption.
Oh, yeah, the .y'all.
That's right. All right, let's get back into place.
Okay, so mise en place in culinary just means basically your prep, and specifically for chefs, you have to realize that unlike most businesses, we clock in, we clock out 9 to 5. With a chef, you're providing a service. You don't have the luxury of making a lot of mistakes or inefficiencies because you have people waiting for their chow. And if they're Chris Powell, you ain't gonna wait for very long.
And Chris Powell, because I always speak in the third person, don't want to be getting no foodborne illnesses with stuff on knives or other materials that can create some allergies or illnesses.
Yeah.
So you got to clean your stuff.
Right. So the whole mise en place notion for chefs has never been codified, as I understood it through the AOM podcast. And so the term mise en place for, I'll say a century of chefs, you have this notion, but
Hello. Good afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my, you got it.
Was this your bench, actually? So we had just started our main topic of the show about mise en place when we had one of these serendipitous moments that you, our dear listener, were unaware of due to AJ's masterful audio editing. As we are recording and as we are talking about what we're going to be talking about in a couple minutes, we see this vehicle drive up near us. And it was a Subaru, go figure, and a wonderful, nice lady happened to be looking at us in the distance, in which we paused our recording. And she goes, "Would you gentlemen mind? I was hoping to decorate my son's tree."
Yeah.
And this bench that we had chosen just a random to sit on, the mother of the son. Came here to decorate a little bit of a tree to get it festive for the upcoming Christmas holiday. Go for it.
Yeah, it's just a quintessential Bellingham podcast. Reason why this show was born off of mobile recording and stuff and being out in Bellingham, because that you don't get sitting in a studio.
Yeah, and Miss Cheryl, the tree looks fabulous. You did a great job decorating, and we're honored to be sitting here on this bench doing the recording. Yep. So with that in mind, let's go to the main topic of our show, which is mise en place. Yes.
So a couple episodes back, we made mention to this notion of mise en place, which is French for just putting things in place and
getting all of the tools in place.
And so there's this notion that Dan writes about that chefs innately do, which is slowing down to speed up. Taking the time to prep things and do things, as my pops would say, do it right the first time or don't do it at all type of a thing, because it sets you up for other things down the line. Now, pivoting that notion of what, you may have seen like, Hell's Kitchen or Chopped or all these other, fantastical, gregarious shows with these, Michelin star chefs yelling at people and stuff. We're not going to go that route. We're going to look at the productivity side of this because that's more of our vein. And the practicality of it, because really mise en place is applicable to anyone in any trade or any business setting, honestly.
It doesn't matter if you are in a hospital, if you are in an insurance agency, if you are in a daycare, if you are in, a startup, a high-tech startup.
Yeah.
This all applies to you.
So Dan mentioned on this episode, and I believe in his book, and about this thing that he does every day called the 30-minute Mise, as in the mise of mise en place type of thing. And this is where you kind of sit down and kind of chart out your course, that the checkoff list, as it were, of the things that you're going to do. But there's a difference between sitting down and like, oh, I need to do this and do this day. Instead of doing a list of things, he also juxtaposes this to what he calls squaring off with your calendar. Because when you just have a list of things, beginning of your day, like, oh, I need to do these 5 things before I go home today. Well, inevitably, you put that on a list, and it just sits there. And then you get sidetracked, maybe some water cooler talk. Or maybe you put it down on you think that you can get it done in an hour, but really, you need to spend some quality time to draft whatever it is.
Well, you also want to be mindful and deliberate about what you're doing instead of just reflexively puking out some kind of email response upon receiving something. You actually want to put some thought into it. I'm speaking just from the business standpoint of here's an email issue, and instead of like blurting out or barfing out some kind of reflexive response, here's something that it takes a little bit of time. That time needs to be accounted for.
And that's where he points out these are the inefficiencies that we see in business settings all the time. And if you ever think to yourself, how is it that, pick any type of role in any of your place of work, how does that person even have a job? I feel like they never get anything done. Probably because they make a whole bunch of checkoff lists that never get done, and it kind of trickles down to those beneath them.
That podcast, in which we happen to have a link in the show notes, and for the love of Q, M, and Moneypenny, drink,
shaken, not stirred.
That's right. They talk a lot about how the task list often it needs to be relating to the calendar. Of I need to do these 20 things. Some can take 5 minutes, some can take 30 seconds, one takes an hour and a half. How does that apply to what's going to happen in your calendar? And if you have a daunting task list and you don't get the stuff done, now the task list continues to build. And then that's going to be a whole lot of stress that you're going to be thinking about and professional overwhelm of the stuff that still needs to be done. And
that's why in the 30-minute Mise, he prefaces that just like a chef, you have to clean your tools and account for what was priorly done. The second part is that you have to square off what you have with your calendar. Now, this is a notion that in a business setting, we are people who look at tasks based off of a calendar day and a calendar week. Chefs don't. Chefs, and apparently in culinary school, they're taught to do timelines because you have to... Perhaps if you're just prepping a vegetable service, let's say, you're chopping vegetables, but you're going to roast them. Well, if you don't preheat your oven before you start chopping, you now have dead time, which means you have people waiting and your service is backed up. And that is no bueno. And that's when you get like Chef Ramsay's exploding.
That whole row your boat thing, it gets way out of line as you do the whole round. You got to get the pre-flight checklist.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you ain't taking off. Yeah.
And that's the other thing is that in a lot of industries that require process that have these checkoff lists, don't rebel against them. They're there for efficiency's sake. Yes, they're tedious, but again, if you go through those, you're going through from technology standpoint, we have routines and subroutines. You have to do X if Y is going to kick off. So think about what you do and do the same notion. What can you do beforehand that will set you up later in your day, your meal service, as it were? So anyway, those are the kind of the three ingredients, I think, is how he prefaced it when it comes to setting up taking mise en place into the office. So squaring off the calendar, cleaning your tools and account for what was done prior, and then prep for your day. And specifically, I appreciated his prep because it is definitive. Prep for your day, not don't let the day dictate what you're going to get done. For instance, we habitually procrastinate. And so we kick the can, and then finally deadline day comes around. It's like, oh, well, I guess I have to do this today. Stop that. That puts innate stress on you. It's your work suffers because of it, because you're under duress, and you're not It's like being an athlete. You're not performing at your best when you let a deadline, you just kick the can, let the deadline day dictate what you do.
Yeah, it's an unnecessary use of cortisol as you are having the last minute scramble, as you are watching that countdown timer to the end of the world of the bomb going off, in which 007 cuts it at 7 seconds on the clock. If you do little incremental bits ahead of time, you can save, you can be able to have some, oops, we need to make some, last minute changes as a result. My 30-minute Mise, which I have developed over almost a quarter century of being a professional technologist. Yeah.
You're a little older than me.
Yes, by a decade, you young punk, is where I usually take... it involves my mouth because I do a lot of I do a lot of talking.
Really?
With my job in educating my clients about technology stuff or explaining why things aren't working for them. I get 18 to 20 ounces of cold water with some type of flavoring. That's part of my pre-flight Mise checklist. That's right. I also clean my tools from a workplace standpoint. If I haven't cleaned up my workspace, like on my desk and all miscellaneous papers or other types of, sticky notes or other garbage like that, I completely clean it up and I either triage it, deal with what needs to be done, or I condo it where I put it all into a pile, and then during the course of the day I will go through it and then take care of business if I have to, get that going on. Cleaning things up before starting the work is essential to me because I find that there's distraction and stress if I have other things that are not helping me fix computer problems. And then setting the stage, as you'd have the clean wooden counter to chop all the food and things like that. I make a deliberate choice of my work soundtrack because I choose the quiet ambient music that I want to listen to, where my mind is guiding me to. That, I haven't listened to this person in a while. This is really soothing. Not a lot of tempo beats going on. This is just what I need because I got a whole lot of deep work. And then clean mouth, check. Clean mind, check. Clean desktop, check. Let's open up the email and see who's upset with me.
Hey, 8 o'clock has now come around. Okay.
That's right, exactly. So, AJ, what's your 30-minute Mise look like?
So mine, I'm going to kind of hybridize because I've got the freelance side of me and I got the tech side of me. And for me, like, this is a meism. This is, you quote me on this if you'd like. If options are the mother of all indecision and uncommitment, then not setting priority is the father of all impatience.
Preach.
Okay, so here is the thing that bothers me regardless of my role, okay? For those of us that work in a production schedule, it's similar. I won't say it's the same, but it's similar to a chef because they have a dinner service that night. We have a production that has to go live. Whether I like it or not, I've got to get it done. In doing so, like, you have to line up your talent. You have to line up your editing time. You have to account for something going wrong because inevitably it will. Matter of fact, in the art show I mentioned, it was a different interview. Sorry, a different interview that I gave recently. Somebody asked me, as an artist, what if somebody's diving into a big production or diving into a big project? What is the first thing that you tell them to do? And I say, take whatever you think, however long you think soup to nuts it's going to take that number and double it. Otherwise, you're going to start off with the wrong foot.
I was gonna say 20 minutes or 20% more, but doubling it gives you plenty of margin for those unforeseen, unplanned life occurrences.
Yeah, because honestly, the times that I did not do my own math, that's when it bit me in my tuchus.
Yep, and when you back to back meetings, you don't account for those follow-up questions and other things on that email. There's actually, by the way, a system update on your computer.
Yep. That
takes 35 minutes for you to be able to get back into your computer. You didn't plan for that.
Yeah.
And that's going to push everything behind. Now you're as stressed out as a doctor with waiting rooms full of patients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, because a lot of people love to have options or throw options out. What about this? What about that? Is you not committing. Okay. If yes, evaluate your options, but there is a time and place for that. That is the Mise part, okay? Not when you're in production. You've already made you've done the timeline, you've already done the work. Actuate it, okay? Because for me, I hate the feeling of being a busybody. I hate that notion because I have an objective that I'm trying to do. I solve for the objective. I move on. I don't want to keep coming back to it and back to it and back to it. It's kind of like the equivalent of doing reshoots. there's nobody that likes to do reshoots or re-recordings. Like, and in Bellingham podcast history, I think we've done like 2 or 3 re-recordings in 170 episodes. Why? Technology even fails technologists.
And life happens.
Yeah.
And stuff happens that's outside of our understanding or control.
So, and that feeds into the second half of what I said, which is if you don't set a priority, it's the father of all impatience, which is, if you don't prioritize what you're doing when you're doing your Mise, it sets you up because, you jump back on your list and you're like, I should consider this. No. If you have a priority, you set it, you forget it, and you actuate it. And that for me is the first part of it. So I look at what options I need to do, I evaluate them, I set a priority, and I actuate it. That's it. Okay.
Can I jump in on something?
Absolutely.
As you're talking about those priorities or those things that must be done in a workday, is it safe to at least propose that a 5 to 10 minute break can be put into a calendar, that is a priority as well, because that turns you into a happier human being when you can take a break? Because if we keep stacking things back to back without a break to let yourself go to the bathroom, to or drink or to have a meal that's not eaten in front of your email program, I think that's something that as you are taking all of the task lists and deciding what goes into my workday, how am I going to be able to get all this done? That is something to take care of yourself, because you will be, unfortunately, you won't be adding anything to the bottom line in your revenue for your business, but there's the intangible asset of you being a happier, healthier, at least more thoughtful person, professional, if you take those 5 to 10 minute breaks or that extended amount of time for margin.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And that's why in that episode that kind of kicked off the mise en place that we're doing now, I mentioned on 5 days a week, when I first get in, I have a 30 to a 60 minute block that just says triage. Yep. And that's part of this, because I have to be able to evaluate and make those prioritizations. Otherwise, I'm just hustling and bustling. And I hate that busybody feeling, dude.
That was 2013. And the hustle and the bustle both want their stress ball back. We're in a new age, a new era where the self-care at work is important. And hey, by the way, if you're listening to this and you have a boss that doesn't believe in taking time for yourself to be able to reflect, to process, to get away from the screen for a little bit, send them my way. I'll be happy to have a conversation with them and tell them what for. That
public service announcement brought to you by Chris Powell.
That's right. All right,
once I wanted to get that, because that essence will kind of carries through the rest of my 3 parts of my Mise, which is if I'm doing freelance stuff, or even if I'm not, my kit must be organized. Mm-hmm. And I've mentioned on this 170 episodes of the show, I have a lot of bags for that reason, because I have to account for thousands of dollars of equipment, schlepping it there and back, and making sure that it makes it back. Yep. You know, I've never left a piece of kit, because just like a surgeon has to evaluate how many scalpels they had before the surgery and after, because whoops, we're supposed to have 10 and there's only 9. Did I leave one in, Chris? Oh my gosh.
That's why I can't really turn to my right now. I get this jabbing feeling inside my gut. Anyway.
So that's part of my you look at it as your desk space, but for me, I'm usually more out and about. So like I know what's with me, what I schlep and what I bring back. The second part is again, time and accounting for it. So I'm going to use our show, for instance. This is episode 170. We've recorded, usually we record for almost 30 minutes on the spot, but there's probably 10 minutes before we light the mics where we're venting, and then 5 minutes of,
going over
jovially going over what we did, and then we drive back to our respective homes. You know, that's 45 minutes, and then I have another 45 minutes of editing. Every episode, every week.
If we talk about a 30-minute episode, it's actually an hour and a half, just from the time that I get to spend in time with you, socially distanced, of course. In this current era, in person. Yeah. But on the calendar, it's recorded episode. Yep. Nope, it's an hour and a half.
And then lastly, prepping my studio. That's the best way that I could equate the chopping block, as you use the analogy of. And I have a link in the show notes.
And for the love of Auric Goldfinger, drink.
Auric Goldfinger, that was a good one.
I don't mess around.
I put a link to actually my studio, and this was in the interview that I recently just gave. But for my 9 to 5 job, it's a little bit different because, again, I use that dedicated time of triage to be able to get things going. So anyway, that wraps up our Mise.
Indeed. And now let's get into game mode. Not the kind of Fortnite, League of Legends, and Cyberpunk 2077 that isn't ever going to come out. Let's talk about Bellingham Bingo.
I'm looking at you going, what references are you doing?
I'm trying to, hello, fellow gamer. I'm trying to be cool.
You didn't even know who Toadstool was. Okay, anyway.
I don't exactly, which is why I'm talking. What's a place to go get grub, AJ?
Okay, so Bellingham, Bingo. So recently, I went down to our social distanced, masked up, sing along if you know the words, our farmer's market.
Yes.
So obviously my son has a lot of allergies and not a lot of stuff. They're sort of vegetables that we can never get, and some of the vegetables are part of his allergy. But Ralph's Bavarian Pretzel Bakery, I want to give them a shout out.
Shout out!
First of all, I didn't know that their pretzels were vegan, so that nukes like half of his allergies. Great. The other half, my son, they took the time to listen to my son. My son, this was his first time to order his own thing. He had to say that he has allergies, and he started listing them off. And of course, we're there to make sure he didn't miss any. And the wonderful woman behind the plexiglass barrier gave him the time and listened to him and let him know that these pretzels were okay for him. And then he looked at us and he ordered his first thing, and, as a mom and dad, we were quite proud. And anyway, they were the goods, like to give us the time to let our, preschooler do that.
Not only did this wonderful staff lady give the gift of listening, gave the gift of empathy, and also the gift of a tasty pretzel.
2 of them, actually.
2 of them. Well, alrighty then. And probably more to come once we get into the cold season for treats.
Yes.
If you clean up your bedroom, we can go get a Ralph's pretzel. Yay!
Yay!
All right, cool.
What about you, Chris?
So that was a B slot for Bavarian pretzel.
Yes. Or bakery. I didn't know which one.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I got another B for you. I've talked about them in the past, and over in the Barclay district, the weather, it looks beautiful on a Sunday afternoon to start this month of November. But guess what? It's a little darn chilly. And if you ever need to warm up the cockles of your heart, or maybe in that subcockle zone, sometimes you need to get a drink. And here we go again. In 170 episodes, both AJ and I, mainly me, talk about how while we may talk about drinks, we have nothing but honor and respect for the heroes among us that are going through recovery for particular addictions of some sorts. If one of them being alcohol, please feel free to just hit that 45-second fast forward button. But the Blue Abode Bar, and no, it's not Adobe like in technology. The Blue Abode is a humble abode. It's a wonderful place on Barclay Village, 2925 New Market Street. If you're playing at home on your Google Maps, if not, you should probably be checking your email. They have some wonderful drinks available, all the pints you would want to have for beer, and they also have some cocktail concoctions. I'm enunciating carefully.
Like a Vesper Martini?
It could very well be. It could very well be. But I'll tell you what. So a lot of y'all have heard my voice. Fewer of you have actually seen me in person. The fact that I would enjoy ordering a pink basil sour
that's right,
speaks volumes. All right, you hear my voice. Drink. Yeah, I shed no tears in ordering this boldly and daringly. I would like a pink basil sour, please. Yes. Because gin, grapefruit, pamplemousse, lemon, simple syrup, and basil. That's a tasty combination for when I need to get a drink after a hard day's work with my beautiful wife. I'm a fan of the Blue Abode Bar, and the owner, the barkeep behind the bar, very friendly chap. Very welcoming, very friendly. I wish they would be able to buy out the 2 businesses to
the left and the right,
flanking them because it's a little cramped.
Yeah.
And I would love to, but my wife and I have kind of rolled 7 on the dice table. We've gotten this wonderful little love seat by the door where we can sit, cuddle together and have our drink, and it's a beautiful thing. Nice environment, but down with Barclay Village and the Blue Abode Bar. So this next bit.
Oh yes, this last bit is our quality assurance, because these picks are picked for you by AJ Barcet and Chris Powell. And we're going joint on this one for your quality assurance.
We both believe in this one. So there's, we are all about mentioning podcasts that are
Content
worth
creators.
What's that?
Good, worthy content creators.
Absolutely. And we want to also encourage those who are new to the podcast fam.
Yes.
And keep your eyes peeled in your podcast feeds. They're ramping up slowly. They're making a diligent effort, but the Whatcom Dads podcast is about ready to unleash itself in all dadliness on the podcast feeds. We got a link to them in the show notes.
And for the love of...
Come on. For the love of Honey Rider drink.
Honey Rider?
Dr. No, it was Ursula Andress, dude.
Of course you would know that type of stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and a name as dumb as that has got to be the name of a Bond girl. Anyway, the Whatcom Dads podcast, having nothing to do with Honey Rider. We know a couple of the co-hosts. They're local dads, and why don't you talk about?
So according to their show, they debate about parenting topics, and they share dad-specific stuff of Whatcom County, like recommendations, and they bring on guests to unpack particular aspects of being a dad, and of course they're very welcoming of moms as well.
Yeah, because they're inclusive, not exclusive.
Of course. So anyway, they got 3 episodes, but we do know some of the show hosts, so we wanted to give a little bit of shout out to our podcast brethren here in Whatcom.
Absolutely. And so give them a try, whether you're a dad or you're not a dad. I think the personalities of the hosts may not be as gregarious as the 2 knuckleheads that you're currently listening to, but their heart is in the right place. And I know there's going to be some wonderful content that they have coming down the pike. Along with words that end in K, we should probably stick a fork in this episode.
No, man, I'm going to have to disagree. We're going to have to put an olive in this martini.
Put a swizzle stick in this episode.
Yep, there we go. That
it.
wraps it up for this very Bond tip-of-the-hat centric edition of the Bellingham Podcast. Thank you again so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us, wherever you like to get this podcast. Remember, if you're in the Bellingham area, you might be listening to us on KMRE 102.3 FM.
They're currently streaming worldwide at kmre.org. Miss Moneypenny.
And on that note, thank you, 007. I'm AJ Barcet.
And thanks to Miss Cheryl for the wonderful visit that we had earlier. My name is Chris Powell, and thank you once again for joining us on episode 170. I love saying that number on the Bellingham Podcast. And we're at episode 170. We are 170.
Yeah, we're at 70.
All right, cool. Yeah. Bring it.
You've tuned into the...
Wait. Yeah, we're going to...
I want to make sure that...
Wind the bond.
Otherwise, I'm not going to pay attention.
Otherwise, Q will be disappointed with you.
Money. You've tuned into the Bellingham Podcast for the week of November 1st.
Let's do that again. Try to get a new month, Sparky.
I'll keep that one for the end.
There you go.